When Jesus applied the words of the prophet Isaiah to himself, this application became an indication of the behavior characteristic of those anointed by the Spirit of God. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, he said, because God has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. God has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Yet we discover that while the initial response of those in his home synagogue of Nazareth was favorable, their sentiment toward him eventually turned hostile, assuming that he was placing himself over and above them as possibly a divinely chosen prophet or Messiah they had to follow. And like any community that knows its members, these residents of Nazareth first questioned among themselves, is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? Are his brothers not James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? And are not his sisters here among us? The mood of the synagogue then became so offensive that the members sought to grab and hurl him off a nearby cliff to his death. Stories such as this serve as warnings that attempts to change deeply ingrained religious and world perspectives can cause great upheaval in our lives and therefore should be pursued very, very delicately. As a church, while we appreciate Martin Luther's catechism, which teaches us important tenets of faith, we realize that faith is more than the recitation and repeating of spiritual principles, but sometimes involves the upsetting questioning and probing of values that hopefully lead to a greater affection for and identity with one's faith. With each teaching of the Ten Commandments, Luther poses to his students follows the question, what does it mean? Which is followed by an answer Luther offers that the students are to remember. So with the first commandment, which says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the house of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, you shall have no other gods before me, comes the question, what does it mean? To this question, Luther answers, we should fear, love, and trust God above all things. Still, the answer leads to more questions. Can one both fear and love God? And if fear in this context means to respect, does not respect have to be earned? What is it about God that we should respect? To the inquiring soul, Jesus provides an answer concerning the character of God that we, upon reception of God's Spirit, will reflect a divine character worthy of love and respect. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because God has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. This is not a statement of divine character for the powerful and privileged, who we in some form or fashion are or aspire to be in relation to an increasingly impoverished world. This is a statement of divine character for those who are physically or spiritually poor, physically or spiritually oppressed, marginalized, and ostracized for who they are or what they believe, who intimately realize that by accepting the deeply ingrained religious and world perspectives in which they were reared, they are denying the spirit that affirms their humanity and sets them free. The Spirit of God draws us out of isolation into community, out of a social conditioning that places individuality over community, out of a mindset that wonders, what can you do for me? Into a compassion that wonders what we can do for each other. The Spirit of God upsets the status quo by drawing us out of worldly divisions and into spiritual community, where we may mutually care for one another, knowing, in the words of the Apostle Paul, that if one member suffers, all suffer together. And if one member is honored, all rejoice together. Amen.